Welcome to Master B2B Mythbusters. Man, I would not want to be in that seat. Woohoo! This is a fun and exciting session, folks. We take a commonly held preconception in e-commerce and B2B e-commerce, and we find out if it's the truth or if it's a myth. My name is Brian Beck. I am thrilled to be joined again today by Andy Hoare for the latest Mythbusters session. Andy, for those of you who don't know him, is the CEO of Paradigm B2B. He's a veteran of Forrester Research, where he led the B2B e-commerce practice, and he's my partner in this thought leadership series. Andy, welcome. Good to be here with you.
Great to be here. We love the Mythbusters. Not only is it fun to actually have the Mythbusters, it's fun to actually watch the intro to the Mythbusters. And I was wondering as I was watching it, like, just who gets to clean that up? I mean, they just burn the hell out of this chair. And I guess they just leave it there and go home. Anyway, for those of you who don't know Brian, partner here, Brian is like an action figure in B2B. He's a consultant, he's a speaker, he's an author. He's been at this for 2 decades now?
Yeah, more.
Wrote a book called $1 Billion B2B E-commerce. Very good book. Yeah, great to be here, Brian. I can't wait to dig in.
Yeah, no. So our topic today is replatforming. Does it mean rip or replace? We're going to get into that with our subject matter expert in just a few minutes. But folks, if you haven't joined us before, this is your interactive sessions. This is a fast-hitting 30-minute session. We want your comments. We want your questions. Andy and I are going to be watching for those, and we're going to throw them at this subject matter expert. See if you can stand up to the hot seat. We want you to help us. So, and at the end of this, we're going to find out. We're going to ask you to vote to see whether or not he busted the myth or not. So stay tuned for that. You know, Andy, replatforming. I've done it myself, 6 times, and in my career, and I've helped dozens of companies through it as of you. You know, it is so disruptive. It can really take a business's eye off the ball. And, you know, we're going to see our line of questioning here is going to be, isn't it better to just do it all at once, to rip off the Band-Aid, rally the troops, get the future platform in place, and, you know, really do it once and get it over with. And we're going to ask some questions around that. You know, I think it does make sense, but we'll find out if the expert we have can prove us wrong. Right, Andy?
Well, certainly that's the conventional wisdom, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to spend more time and it's going to cost more money to do precision, replacement. So this could be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So this is a hot topic, Andy. I think this is our biggest Mythbusters yet in terms of people that have signed up to participate. And I'm looking at who's joining here. We've got First Supply, Traffic Safety Warehouse, Uline is here, 3M, Home Depot's here. I see Carolina from Whitecap. Hey, Carolina. We've got Steve Baruch, Anu Gupta from Tesco is here. Hey, Anu. Henkel, Paul from IBT. And we even have PE firms joining us. I noticed that Vivek from Transom Capital's here. So, guys, thank you for being a part of this. And this is an exciting topic. So I think it's about that time, Andy. We got to bring in our person. So, Robert, let's roll it. Who do we have in the hot seat today?
If you miss it the first time, you get it the second time.
That's right. That's right. More pain in that hot seat. Okay, we're going to find out today if Germans are in fact fireproof. I don't know, Aaron. So welcome, Alex, the Grappler Graph. Alex is a former contender on our Unwebinar series. And Alex, thrilled that you joined us. Alex is the CEO and German Terminator from Spryker Systems. Alex, say hello to our audience today.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Andy. Thank you for having me again.
Again, that's right.
Brian, you notice that I think he's inoculated himself against the heat. He started a little fire in the background there in the Alps, I guess is where he is right now.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
We'll see.
I
wasted take the big heat.
I wasted like the first 5 years of my career doing rip and replace, but since I'm following the more agile waterfall approach, I'm living this life here.
I see. Living the dream in the Bavarian Alps because he doesn't do rip and replace anymore. Okay, we're not going to make it that easy, Mr. Graf.
Okay.
Andy, you want to go ahead and start? Let's fire away on our first question.
Yeah, it's a simple question. If it's an old system, you got to rip and replace it. I mean, if your TV breaks, your phone breaks, you don't get it repaired. You get it replaced, right?
That's true. So I have to admit it's true. When money and or time is not an issue, you should do rip and replace. Like for your smartphone, if it's broken, you can just buy a new one. It takes you like 2 minutes on Amazon, and you have a new one next day. But I think it's not true when it comes to more complex systems. And usually, if you're talking about rip and replace in the IT environment, we are not talking about like broken systems, like they're not working anymore. Maybe they're a bit slow, or they don't act in a way you would expect it. But usually they are working somehow, like the connection is there, like the cell phone connection. And this reminds me of like my first 5 years in the career, because I was starting my career in a company called the Otto Group, which was like the mail order champion in Europe. And I was working in the department focusing on mobile commerce. We were doing mobile commerce on phones like this. Andy remembers those phones. Like, you can just open the drawer. I think he has like still one working.
He's really
in the drawer.
old.
So,
yeah.
But and then Otto finally decided to rip and replace Amazon to become like the new champion. And we wanted to have like a new front end. We want to get rid of the old front end. We want to get rid of the shop infrastructure, and we want to do it right. We want to do rip and replace. And I believed, that's the right thing to do. So we cannot do it like in tiny steps. We need to do rip and replace. And then a consulting firm was asked to help us with this. And the head of the consulting firm, Udo, came to our team and asked me, okay, Alex, what should we do with the new platform regarding the mobile commerce capabilities? That was like 2007. And we told them A, B, C, D, E, whatever, better pictures, better rendering, better text, less text on mobile screens, monochrome screens. And, just 1 year later, in 2008, he came back and said, Alex, we have now all the requirements from the new media team, which was the online team called back then, from the new media team. Now we just want to check if everything is still up to date. And then we can start like replacing it. And obviously, in 2008, the iPhone came out. And we had to say, no, Udo, everything changed. We have to start from the scratch again. And I'm pretty sure Udo is still in the company trying to figure out the requirements in a complex system. And from what we've learned there, we have wasted years in this kind of rip and replace mode. And there, Amazon, Zalando, and others started like to move ahead of us. So it's like in complex IT environments, I haven't seen like many rip and replace projects that really were successful.
But Alex, if you don't rip and replace, aren't you just investing in old code? You're just building more technical debt. There's a point at which you have to do it, right? I mean, what is Auto Group still on that thing from 2002 or something? Or did they ever rip and replace?
Yeah, that's the theory. But there's like one example you've heard like a couple of weeks ago, which is I think still Andy's favorite, like boutique, which is Olympia Sports, right? That's where usually people like us are going to buy some sports good, and they are owners of the domain shoebuy.com. And this was very old code, and it was like in the press only a couple of weeks ago. I think it's from September 2022 when they filed bankruptcy, and they went rip and replace with Salesforce. They said, okay, we cannot update the old system. It takes too long. It's like tiny bits, and we want to have like a modern system. Let's go with something we don't depend on our own development team, where it's really fast, where we just follow standards. And 3 weeks later, after the launch, they had to file for bankruptcy because it just didn't work out. So the 50% of all the orders were wrong. The conversion rate dropped 50% in the first weeks. So it just didn't work out. So in theory, I'm with you. Having a new, fresh system, I'm with you. And so many people tried it, but either all those people and companies who tried it are like stupid or not capable to do it, or there must be a systematic failure, which I believe there is.
Okay, so Alex, you're using ShoeBuy as an example. ShoeBuy was a thing like 15 years ago, man. It's like not even a relevant business model.
For some of us in the call, and I don't look at any person here, it was a thing just weeks ago. Okay,
no, I'm sure. Because so if you go rip and replace, you're going to go bankrupt. Is that what you're saying?
In many cases, you are. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, let's talk about the alternative.
Might be a stretch. Go ahead. Yeah. What's the alternative? Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't rip and replace. There's some magical way you can precisely replace certain things without having, that conflict with something that's already in existence. Like, how do you balance the new code with the old code? Because at some point, they're going to conflict.
Yes, and it's true, and obviously it's like the constant fight between like the waterfall approach and the agile approach. So there will be conflicts on the way, and usually a huge rip and replace project versus a small agile project, like the amount of problems is more or less the same. But what you do like in an agile project is you're reducing the problems to a size where they become manageable. So if you manage like replacing only a tiny part of the code first and get rid of the old API infrastructure, replacing it with a new API infrastructure, replacing maybe the catalog system first and not the front end first. So the problems become manageable. And if they become manageable, that means usually that you can solve a problem in a very, very small time frame, not years, but maybe weeks or months. And when this becomes manageable, then the whole project becomes manageable. Because if you have like a huge waterfall project, let's say Shubai would have like replaced the old platform in a standard waterfall way, it's just too complex. The problems are like piling up, and then you need to find solutions for all of the problems that are coming from different domains, and that's just not possible.
But isn't it the same? Aren't we just prolonging the pain of replatforming by doing it this way, Alex? I mean, you've got now.
I agree. You do. But what's the alternative? Going bankrupt? Is that what you're saying?
That's not an absolute. Everybody who does rip and replace goes bankrupt. That's a fallacy, sir.
Yeah.
So no, but think about it. Like the burden on the organization. Okay, fine. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to rip and replace. I'm going to do this step at a time. I'm not going to rally the troops and accept it for a year or a year and a half. I'm going to be sucking it up and doing this project and taking my eye off the ball of the business. And when I come out the other side, I'm going to be in better shape with a more flexible. I'm instead going to do this piecemeal.
Yeah,
I have many different providers. I'm going to have to do lots of integrations. Not only that, I have to manage different contracts. I have to pay different people. I have to do integrations to lots of different systems. I'm doing this, and then I'm building throwaway code. Does that make sense?
Even a big rip and replace project is like a piecemeal project. You have like hundreds of different vendors, hundreds of different contracts, but there's no tangible outcome for your consumers or for the team the time you're doing the rip and replace project. So I would definitely go, and as we've all learned that the only common denominator of success is like speed of adaptation. You have to adapt on market changes. You have to adapt on customer requests. You have to adapt on like partner management changes, and maybe the model you want to go for a year ago is not existent anymore. So what I'm just challenging is like the time the time vector here. So it just takes too long. Though in theory it's correct, and I've been involved in so many projects where we tried like rip and replace, and we really wanted to do it good. But if it's too complex, if there's too many people involved, if there's too much expectation management to done, which only means that you have to talk to people again and again and again, explaining them an end state, which cannot be explained right now because you're moving to this end state, and then it takes long. It only consumes time without any outcome. It reminds me of the big ERP projects. There was no alternative for it, but an ERP project usually means you are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in a corporate environment without any tangible outcome for the internal team or for your external customers for years. In an environment where everything is changing so fast, you cannot afford this strategy anymore. In the ERP time in the 90s, you could afford it because time was not an issue. You had 5 years to do it, or 8 years, and you had the money.
Okay,
but now time is the main issue.
But you're describing enterprise. What if I'm a mid-market company? It's simpler. I have fewer systems. I'm not in 50 countries. I have one product line. I'm a manufacturer. Why can't I rip and replace? It'll take a lot less time.
Yeah, I would not argue that it cannot rip and replace. It really depends on how big the business is already on the system you want to rip and replace. If this is like a main source of income, a main source of your business, then it's usually hard to rip and replace because the time you would need for rip and replace, like doing the freeze, the feature freeze, the function freeze, the requirement freeze, then every day people are knocking at your door and saying, hey, we need this feature. We are not moving to a new country, but like we need this kind of new security template in the landing page. And then you have to say, but dear colleague, I cannot do it because like we're going to have like a new sensational platform in a year. And then your colleague says, yeah, but I need this, otherwise I cannot sell the product anymore. So this is like the daily conflicts you need to handle.
I don't know. I'm not sure I'm buying it, Andy. I mean, think about cost, right? I mean, the cost of doing all these different, you talk about time, fine. Okay. So maybe in some scenarios it compresses time. I'm seeing dollars. I'm just going to carry my money outside and throw it in the dumpster.
Well, and what if it's a leap forward in technology? I mean, if you're going to maintain an old system that is clearly outdated, why would you want to do that if, yeah, there's pain associated with both processes, but wouldn't we rather have the pain of something new that's at least in a next generation environment versus having to maintain something that's old in the last generation environment?
It's true. So if you describe it this way, then obviously everybody wants to agree, but it's not usually one system. It's usually a very complex team consistent out of 100 systems. There's like 5,000 business rules built in, pricing rules, inventory update rules, whatever. So it's just not one system. So, and just describing this big ecosystem is very, very complex. So what I would go for is like find like the most value adding part of this system, which is still manageable. It can still be replaced in like in a smaller agile way in weeks or months, and start with this part of system, then build around. It's like, you know, if I would have seen, if I were to see like hundreds of successful rip and replace projects where companies said, okay, we have not invested into digital infrastructure for years, we're going to do it now, we rip and replace. If they were successful, I would agree. Yeah, it's a better way. It's an easier way because like you can retain customers better, you can retain your team better. It has maybe it has a cost advantage, but that's not what the market is telling us. It's not like if we go to all the different examples who tried this, even like with tiny fractions of their business, only like 2-3% revenue, grocery businesses that try to rip and replace the existing e-commerce platform or the ERP system or the OMS platform. Yeah, it's too hard to do. And, you know, and then I was asking myself let's go back to the example with Udo, the consultant helping with Otto. Super smart guy, the whole team, super smart. They had so strong software architecture charts where they say, yeah, that's the way to go. And if like hundreds of smart people cannot do it, even though they have all the experience, they have all the tools, they even had back then all the money, then there must be a systematic error in rip and replace.
So, okay. So Alex, you mentioned there's some places to start, right? So, okay, let's assume that this piecemeal approach is that, that you're, taking a step at a time is the right path for companies. So you mentioned what are you seeing? How do you prioritize? Where do they start? And you mentioned, something a little earlier about, finding the most important or most impactful point of the journey or what have you. What are those? What are you guys seeing? I mean, you do this sort of incremental all the time at Spryker, right? So what do you see as those use cases? Like where are they starting?
Incremental is the way to go. So we are obviously calling it like moving into composable commerce, and Gartner just named us like the composable commerce leader worldwide from all e-commerce platforms. And I think that's the way how you have to manage your business. If you don't know what creates the most business value for your company, you usually have to parallelize a couple of bets. Let's say implementing a personalized, a tailored pricing mechanism, implementing a B2B app for maybe 100 or 200 customers only, which are like your top 5% customers, doing this or that. Though usually there's no limitation of good ideas that would change the trajectory of your business. It's already there. And from a management perspective, you have to choose or pick the ideas that are creating the most value, or you believe in they create the most value, and where we call it a so-called coalition of the willing, where it's like people that do want to change. Focus on those businesses first, because expectation management with people that are so-called naysayers, it's not possible. You cannot. If let's say Andy is one of the naysayers in a company where you want to, usually is, I know, where you want to rip and replace something, and he will challenge me all the day. Alex, what is the business outcome here? When will it be ready? What is the payback in 5 years? What if we invest this kind of money now into our SEO strategy that will get like an immediate payback on our top line? Blah 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 blah. And as many of those bets will fail, that's the nature of these digital businesses. Andy, like in theory, is like right in 80% of the cases. What will Andy do? Andy will go around and say, I told you, I'm smarter than you. I told you it's so much better to listen to me, but it's wrong. Like it's just like his like very, very small view of the world of this kind of company. And it's just an example, Andy. Sorry, I'm picking you.
No, it's great. Actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because when you break it down like that, when you fractionalize it and you make it little pieces or incremental changes, then you are actually competing with other projects that people could carve off and say, you know what, maybe to add this little pricing capability, it might be better for us to, focus on a CPQ technology instead, versus if you make a whole rip and replace, that's not on the table.
Yes, it's true. And obviously, like from a certain point on, you need to get like into a data-driven mode where you create kind of A/B tests, where you create of like different tests, where you have like measurable KPIs, which you can use in the arguments. Whenever there's like, and if there's people that don't accept those kind of tests and arguments, it's kind of a very hard environment to do rip and replace or doing the agile way. So, but I think the agile way is easier to manage, way more cost efficient, and it's a better way to manage the naysayers.
Well, I think actually this is a good segue, Brian, to another discussion we want to have, which is about people.
Mm-hmm.
And, we could put aside a moment, whether it's better to do, a rip and replace versus an incremental kind of shift with a platform, but think about how people approach these things and managing this project, both up and down in the chain. So when you're talking to the senior executives, say, hey, we're going to spend a bunch of time putting a new module in. They're like, so, versus we're going to spend a bunch of time and money replacing this capability so that we can deliver much better world-class experiences. And then down the chain, you're also talking about getting people motivated to be a part of something bigger, right? Mm-hmm. And when you say, hey, it's a really narrow project and we're going to tackle this one now, that's not as exciting as, hey, we're going to do something completely new. I'm a part of a team. So how do you motivate people to do like little bits and pieces of things when there's an alternative, which could be, hey, we're replacing this whole system. It's going to deliver a functionally different outcome.
I believe motivation or culture, as some other name it, that's a result. It's an outcome. It's an outcome or a result out of like fast-moving project of creating something together. And therefore, I would focus on something that can be created very fast together. So you create this kind of new culture, this kind of, yes, I want to be part of this like moving thing, and more people will join and join and join. And don't focus on the others that don't want to be part of it first. So I agree, you need to find this group, you need to find this part of the business where there's enough momentum already there, where you can create this kind of outcome, because only with a positive outcome you can start this kind of motion. But it's very hard to convince people that, for good reasons, believe that this thing they have built for 20 years is a very solid thing, or for good reason say, I don't believe in PHP, or I don't believe like in the headless commerce piece. They might have reason, but I don't think it's smart to invest like too much time into those conversations. And I hate name dropping, but I have to say we asked the same questions to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was part of our show last year, and he was like in there virtually, so it was very affordable. No, that was a lie. It was virtually, but it was not affordable at all. But we asked him, he was like involved in so many projects and so many like different topics in his career where people said, okay, you cannot do it. You're smoking cigars. You cannot be like the health inspector for like California. and then we asked Arnold, how did you manage the naysayers? And he said, you don't need to manage the naysayers. You just need to understand like, 20% of all people in the world, they don't like their mothers. And I think it's a very smart way to look at the world. You have to find the people that do love their mothers and to work with them first and build momentum around them. And then the others will join later on the way.
That's the next Mythbusters one. It's just the one about psychology, Alex. Actually, that's a funny story. One final question, then we got to get to our poll in a few minutes here. But one of the things that I find really interesting, we've got a lot of folks on the line here who are thinking about replatforming, right? These are folks who are, and so when we've got leaders, VPs of e-commerce, chief digital officers on the line here, what do you tell them? So do you say to them, hey, what would you say to them? Hey, don't think about just a replatforming of your e-commerce. Instead, keep your current platform and do these couple little things. And eventually 2 or 3 years from now, you'll be fully replatformed over time. And now I'm managing several systems. I've got, it's just, to me, it seems like it's a lot of complexity. I mean, what would you tell them if you were asked by, one of our VPs of ecom, Alex, how do I approach this? Should I not replatform?
No, there's there's different ways to approach it. So some of our customers in the B2B segment, they're starting like with new countries, new domains, moving into new business models, building a marketplace with Spryker. Just like that's their way to find this kind of momentum. And like for companies that do have like a strong USP and strategic value and create strategic value for their customers, they still could replace bigger parts of their platform, and it can come out of it's okay. The result might be okay. With shoebuy.com, I think it's an odd example because like it was failing already. So they were closing so many brick and mortar stores already. So it had to work out. Like they had only like one shot. They used a very, very cheap cheap gun called Salesforce, and it just didn't work. So, but we are helping with our team. Usually, we are helping to find out what's the best way to get things done. What kind of angle you need to choose to tackle this kind of business issue. Where can you start doing things? So there might be the goal of replacing the platform for companies that are going with Spryker, for example. But we are always starting at like a small part of the business and just get things rolling because it's not painful. It can happen quick, and you can create results for your customers or your B2B customers, for example, within weeks.
All right.
That's interesting, Brian. And before we go to our questioning, I think if you think about building, a building or something like that, you have to lay some foundation first. You can't build, bits and pieces of the building in corners and then eventually get to a big building, which doesn't mean that it's necessarily a waterfall approach. It can be an agile approach to that. But I think there's a basic amount of fundamental work that you have to do that you can't really get around, which is why I think Brian and I said, hey, we're arguing that rip and replace to some extent is required. I do appreciate your point about, potentially doing things in a more agile way and doing rip and replace, but I'm still kind of married to this idea that you can't completely incrementalize a platform replacement project. But wait, that's my opinion, Brian. Yours?
I think I actually agree. I think is a middle ground, and I think at the end of the day, we've been arguing that for rip and replace. I think it's just really situationally dependent, and it depends on whether the company's mid-market or very large, and what their situation is. To me, the most important thing is building in flexibility to the foundation over time, and so not ripping and replacing might be a way to get there, but it really depends on how much. But I would agree with you, Andy. I think we need some foundational elements here that in some cases just have to be ripped out because they might be 15 or 20 years old. There might be an in-house system, or might be an extension of the ERP that just doesn't get it done at all, and it's just you're going to get rid of it, right? So I think there's those situations. All right, we got 2 minutes left, guys. We got to go to the poll. Alex, we're going to find out if you busted the myth. Why don't we go ahead and bring that poll up? Wow. All right, you won by a little bit, Alex. You busted the myth by a little bit. Does replatforming mean rip and replace? No, you can replace it in parts. Awesome. Well, everyone, hey, thanks so much for joining our Mythbusters session. Stay tuned. We have some exciting things coming. Next week, we have an webinar. Was loyalty dead in B2B e-commerce? Check into that. Go ahead, Andy.
No.
Oh, shut up. Yes. So we're going to argue that fact. We have 2 groups of great contenders. That's next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those of you who are watching us live. 14th of December. So we're excited about that one. Alex Grab for the Grapplers. Good to have you back, sir. We will see you next time on the next Mythbusters session. Take care, everybody.